What's going on, guys? We have a set of matches here between the Shambler and Hupsaiya. I might end up cherry-picking some of these replays here, but we do have at least 4 that I've got right in front of me. The first of which is going to be, again, on Germination. All of these are on Germination, but this is going to be a Terran versus Protoss. It's a kind of thing that we don't really see too often on the channel, so I'm glad to be able to cast it for you guys. Hupsaiya in the top left, the Shambler in the bottom right. And the interesting thing about this matchup for me is figuring out, does Terran want to go for bio? Does Terran want to go for mech? If you're thinking of a Starcraft 1 conventionally, you always go straight to mech. Well, you can decide to go straight for Fulcrum into Vultures, but it's a lot less, I would say, that you can get less units out on the field, and that means that you're going to be a little bit more risk-prone if you end up losing your army. It's going to be harder to replace it. And sure, you can maybe affect more change on the map a little bit easier because your Vultures are going to be more mobile. But anything else is actually going to, lag a little bit behind. You think about Mavericks, Hurricanes, formerly Firebats. All those units are a lot more, they're a lot different than they used to be anyway, but generally speaking, you look at those and you think to yourself, okay, I can move places around with these guys. I can kind of move as one blob, as one unit. Whereas the Vultures have different movement speed than the Cyclops and the Goliaths, and, especially if you end up adding in any Palladium units or et cetera, et cetera. Shambler is referencing to, apparently Shambler's making reference to Saiyan KCM's stream. He was streaming on YouTube and Twitch yesterday on the day of recording. And so he was hanging out and checking out Cosmonarchy. It's pretty cool. I'm glad Shambler is just playing while also listening to the stream. That's pretty funny. Now, he does have his Maverick out, so he's going to zone away the Scribe Scout. The first game between these two was a pretty anticlimactic one, which is why it's not featured in the cast. But to give you the cliff notes, there was a really interesting aspect of the opener where Hupsaiya decided not to Worker Scout and instead went 2-gate and scouted with his Legionnaire. And that was really cool, actually. I thought there was some interesting aspects to that where the Legionnaire sort of like gets there in time to see anything too shenanigansy. However, I do wonder if it's not, vulnerable to some kind of super early cheese if you think your opponent isn't going to do that. I don't think it could be like the meta move. And so I think it's telling that you see Hupsaiya decide to Worker Scout in this game after doing that in the previous. So Shambler will have to zone it away. It reveals that Shambler has going bio, or at least has a stockade. And I do like this play from Shambler as well. He's getting his expansion up a lot faster this time compared to the last time, because instead of going 2 Fulcrum, he's gone 1 stockade. And you can hold off against things like the Dracodon, against things like Legionnaires. They're actually currently combing through the map right now looking for Worker Scouts, but I believe that Shambler got his Worker Scout back. I don't see a kill on any of these units, so I'm pretty sure he got it back home. And we've instantly got a Quarry on the way. We can almost afford a second one if we want to add that onto our Ministry at home here for the Shambler. He's adding some Hurricanes to sort of force the Dracodons back, and the Stimpacked Mavericks can do their job. Yep, there's the Quarry coming on the way. Dracodon's now moving over here. This is not an entrance. So that's a curious location. A prostration stage. Okay, so Hupsaiya has decided to go straight for like a tier 3 ground structure off of 1 gate. So both of our players are kind of doing something a little bit interesting, where in the case of Shambler, he's kind of greeding for money, for eco, and in the case of Hupsaiya, he's kind of greeding for tech. And I think what he's referring to here is he's probably referring to this ramp here, so it's actually not as much of a problem as he thinks. But yeah, the ramp actually starts like here. So if you're down here in this area, then that's not going to help you out too much. You can see here, forcing the kite, that's what the Hurricanes are for. These two kind of fell backwards a little bit. And now with the Hurricanes sniped, the Dracodons escape with their lives, although a lot of HP damage on one of those. We have a Warden coming up defensively. I'm not crazy about this SimCity, but, it does its job. The prostration stage over here is going to make a Pariah. And Pariahs are really, really quite useful, actually, versus the bio, because if they can get on top of you, they can pretty much guarantee kills, which increases the attack rate of all units that are near the victim. And they can also obviously just take a lot of damage, right? So at this point, Shambler might be a little bit more concerned as a 4th Dracodon makes it in. However, one of them is going to get followed. The other one was very low HP, so it's going to pop as well. Another stim could do wonders here, but it looks like instead the Shambler will fall back. But you love trading 1 Hurakan, 1 Maverick for 2 Drakodons there. You'll take that every day of the week. Worker count in Shambler's favor as he's looking to potentially set things up. The Fulcrum is done. We'll see if it gets an add-on or no, it's going to go for Goliaths. Okay, that's not bad. You know, Goliaths kind of equalize the engagement between Drakodons and Terran. The Pariah, though, is definitely going to be a bit worrisome here. But what's also worrisome is that in order to afford steady Pariah production, Hupsaiya's had to not make an additional production, and he's had to not make an expansion. So, you know, if Shambler doesn't get cleaned out here, the game goes much longer, and Shambler has an advantage. He's already got an economic advantage technically right now, right? And, yep, over here the Mavericks are indeed going to continue zoning things away. I'm not quite sure why the Shambler didn't commit to that, but I guess his Mavericks are getting kind of low from all the stims. It only does 5 damage in Cosmonarchy, but it's still obviously something that's going to add up, right? And there's no healing yet because you do have to tech into that, right, with the Vestry add-on. Now, unfortunately for Hupsaiya, he's going to lose a lot of the HP damage on that, what was a high HP Drakodon. The Anchor's done, so we might see that get changed up. We've got a double Vestry, okay. So switching over to Goliath Cleric, it looks like, off the back of that. And that makes sense. You can keep the Stockades pumping Mavericks if you so need to. And then, as these structures come online, we are in pretty good shape. But there's a lot of Pariahs still back at home. Ecclesiasts starting to come online. These recently received a buff, although not in this game version as of the replay. The range of their shield restore proc is actually larger now, so it's more reliably going to affect change on, you know, units and such. I do like what Hupsaiya is thinking about doing here and spreading his very limited ground force just to cover different pathways, but on Germination it is pretty hard to do that. So he's going to end up retreating to the center of the map. There's this one lone Maverick over here to watch for any backstabs. Could maybe fall a little bit further back so it doesn't get, you know, sideswiped by accident, but... And a Potentate is on the way, so that's an interesting choice. We don't see those very often. Well, the move-out's coming in for Hupsaiya. And for Shambler, rather. I guess that Shambler's units are coming for Hupsaiya, we can say that much. So it looks like the issue will be forced on the Terran's ground, on the Terran's favor, because Shambler's not content to wait up any longer. He does have a third base coming online, so there is that as well, and his worker count is nice and steady. The Natural has finally come online for Hupsaiya, but it's definitely much delayed. And we do have the 3 Pariahs. Potentate is out. Going to be flanking up towards 12 o'clock here. Shambler has not scouted anything, so he has no idea what is in store for him. Otherwise, he probably would have gone for like a Covenant so that he could add Savants to the mix. Try to debuff the Pariahs. But he's going to come in from this side as Hupsaiya is leaving. The Potentate could get caught on the way back up, and now the cliff advantage is firmly in Shambler's camp. But I don't think Hupsaiya is actually aware of this. So we've got Goliath Cleric back at home for defense, but Hupsaiya is going to have to turn around, and he immediately does. The reaction time is almost instantaneous. Scribe's going to fall back over towards behind the mineral line so that hopefully they can do something over there. The Warden doing a little bit of chip damage, and now I feel like I really don't like this position for Shambler. I think a lot of his forces are just going to get chewed up by all the splash damage thanks to the Pariah. There's some focus fire coming on down, but there's no more Hurakans to deal with all of the armor. And with the Potentate helping things out as well, that's going to keep the shields pretty healthy. The Ecclesiast doing a lot of work to keep those Pariahs good, and that is going to result in a total wipe of the Terran arsenal. Now again, Hupsaiya needs to trade positively and I think more cost efficiently than he should normally on a conventional level because his production rate is so governed and so slow. We already have him starting to mine out these minerals, so he's only good for a little bit longer now before his mineral income starts to deplete. He will need to set up a third base, and he is going to do just that. Anchor shifting over, but there's nothing in it just yet. Another anchor going to be constructed. This one still not landing, so it looks like Hupsaiya will get a nice anti-timing here in favor of his forces. The Pariah is going to cycle back. They've actually dragged some of the Goliaths out forward. And again, as soon as those Pariahs start connecting, they're going to deal a lot of splash damage. That anchor did absorb a lot of damage from the Drakodons. It looks like maybe that has frustrated the approach a little bit for Hupsaiya. One Goliath charging all the way down is a bit of a funny move. Loading two of those Goliaths rather into the anchors. One of the Pariahs is really low. The other one's already fallen. Yeah, that's going to be a clean sweep for the front line eventually. They just need to be focused down and right-click. And losing all 3 Pariahs in that engagement, not ideal. Potentate's still alive. That's also a pretty good single target unit, but you need more than just one of them. And at this point, the prostration stage is entirely dedicated to the pariahs, and that's exactly what you would expect in this situation. We've got double anchor down here, but there's actually nothing coming of it just yet because nothing is in it. We have triple Goliath production with a Shaman and some clerics queued up from the vestry stockades. So that's going to be pretty good healing. However, this does stand a chance at swinging in favor of Hupsaiya if the Goliath count gets too low. It's a question of whether or not the clerics are going to give themselves up like that. Yeah, you don't necessarily want to do that. You don't want to get into melee range of the Potentate if you can help it. And so that's because it has a different attack when it melees, and the melee attack is going to increase the efficacy of the nearby units. A second prostration stage coming online. Nexus is indeed done for the third base for Hupsaiya, but he's still in a bit of an awkward position. He's allowed Shambler to scoot up over here. This is a great spot for phalanxes, by the way, because you can shoot over the wall there if you get vision, but it's not in the cards right now. The Pariah is trying to clean house of the clerics. Only one of them staying alive for now. Great value from the Sycophant, the Ecclesiast, the Potentate, but I think maybe Shambler can focus it further down. Hupsaiya is trying to fall back to use his flash shielding there, but not actually going to stack up too much. The Zealot count has now gotten too out of control. There is no crowd control for Shambler, and so that ends up being the main thing. But you could see how competitive the Goliaths were versus the heavy HP values here that we had, the high durability pool. Atlas now on the way here for the Shambler, and it looks like Hupsaiya is going to commit to just Prostration and Gateway. You know, Drakon and Pariah is pretty legit. Zealots obviously help out a lot. I think throwing in a couple Sycophants is advisable. 12 o'clock now going to be in the sights of our Protoss player, and that means that he will be able to finally get ahead of the Terran base count. A couple of units just moving around over here for Shambler, acting as a little bit of a decoy / early warning system. We get a couple of watchdogs that are going to move around and probably just act as scouting. And the treasury is done, but it's not going to be ready to start building workers for a little bit. Going up to 5 Fulcrum, and now switching over to Vulture production. Shambler is going to bank his Vespene a little bit here. I wonder what for. Maybe wants to make sure he can afford the quarry and such at the 6 o'clock location. So I guess we're going to be an even in base count after all. The question is, how soon does Shambler decide to saturate his bases? Just panning around, looking around. We have a Crucible coming online to power all of these structures very nicely. Watchdog is going to confirm 12 o'clock on the way. We'll see if Shambler wants to maybe throw down like 5-6 vultures at a time and then see if he can throw a stack towards 12 o'clock to finish it off. There's not really a great option here for Hupsaiya for anti-air, I'm noticing. I do like the mid-game minefields here for the vultures, but we do have a ministry coming online too. I guess that's probably there for the low ground. Captaincy's coming online. We got more vestries on the way as well. That's an interesting choice. All right, a bit of a move out for both of our players at the same time. Wouldn't you believe it? This Maverick is finally going to see some use because he will actually see or reveal the Protoss arsenal. Or will he? He might not actually be able to see it. Well, here come the mech units anyway. Now it will be revealed. And a nice, great stun that stuns mostly the vultures there. All right, what's the reaction from Shambler? He's going to scramble back over towards his third, it looks like, and just see if he can abandon the ship down here. Will the quarry be self-destructed? That's what we always like to see. Looks like it's going to stay alive for now. Those Goliaths are not going to be long for this world. Yep, he's going to see if he can just hold the fort here with the anchors. But I don't know if Hupsaiya is too interested. Is Hupsaiya even thinking about attacking the third? I think he might just be fine denying the 6 o'clock location. Maybe wrapping around with some of his forces. And for all of Shambler's floated scouts with the watchdogs and such, one of them now hiding in the main, funnily enough. He doesn't seem to really have any vision on where the enemy's army is right now. So his army's going to come on back down over here. And there are some units coming up over here, but there's, you know, a bunch of Goliaths still over in that location. It looks like he's thwarted the initial push. Mine Tyrant's not a bad shout in this situation. And there's nothing to repair these anchors. So the Zealots, the Vultures, the Zealots, the Pariahs, the Ecclesiasts, they will bust down the anchors. So that'll make that position a little bit more easily targetable in the future. Unfortunately, it looks like a pariah did end up going down there at the end. This treasury not yet landing. Now the corresponding push is coming for Shambler. Seeing what he can manage as he starts to lift his forces, but he looks away from his combat units in the middle of the map, and this is a grave overextension for Shambler. Great Maelstrom to slow things down on the way out. Maybe steal a couple of units as well. Yeah, just one Goliath. Could steal a couple clerics as well, you know. Not a bad shot since you heal your own units then. There's a lot of Goliaths here, but they are split. And they're really good powerhouse units in Tier 1, but as more and more units like Pariahs, and especially Mind Tyrants, start to come online, I do think Goliaths struggle at that point. We've got Wyverns out, we've got Madcaps out, we've got Apostles coming. So there's still hope here for Shambler, but he is definitely going to be behind as Hupsaiya looking to take a 5th base. Pariah could engage right onto this meaty stack of Masons, but it's not going to happen just yet. Here's the counter engage. Now that most of these units are down the ramp. You got to watch out here, though, because the Pariah is going to start splashing, and then the Clerics won't be able to heal anything in the back line. Great Maelstroms to slow things down, but is it going to be enough? I'm not quite sure. Pariahs are trying to get into the fight from the back end, but not able to actually connect on anything in the front. And this Mind Tyrant is on the extremities. That could be focused down very, very easily, and I think Shambler thought about that, but instead he's going to go after things like the Potentates and the Dracodins. There's a Potentate going down. Very powerful unit, but very, very expensive. Hate to lose those. The Pariah kind of dancing around ends up dying. And another Potentate hemorrhaged at the end as well. These two Mind Tyrants coming on back. What are they thinking? No, okay. Hupsaiya decides to pull them back as well. We got Sentinels coming online. This is definitely going the distance. We've got Triple Warden coming in the top right, looking for that 5th base. We still have more and more units coming online. The Ancestral Archives, that's going to be critical tech here for Hupsaiya, but he's queued up a second one without actually training anything out of the first. So we're not sure how to feel about that just yet. Adding a lot more Wardens just to try to slow things down. He is going to have to cancel this top right base if he pays attention to it, but it looks like, no, it's going to finish. And that's not the end of the world here. Oh, look at this. Hupsaiya is going to have to see if they don't attack air, Hupsaiya. No, Hupsaiya, don't do it. Oh, shit. He could have just mind-controlled them all. Apostle leading on the front line. You don't necessarily want that to be the case. This is a big ball of Goliaths here, right? What would go very well over here? Maybe something like Uptectons, maybe something like Patriarchs, maybe a lot of Zealots, but there's not very much front line over here. It's all Dracodins, and Hupsaiya's actually not producing anything out of the Ancestral Archives. He's got a lot of float. He's queued up some Pariahs, but he is going to start losing 12 o'clock. And then we're going to be back onto Shambler advantage as far as the economy goes. A big, big engagement. You'd love the zoom out feature here if you could. I think stacking healing. It's pretty good. Yeah, that's talking about the clerics and such. Wyverns coming in from the top rope. See if they can try to attack the workers. This kind of gives you Liberator flashbacks. Yeah, I can introduce you to a game called Brood War if you want that. I don't know what Hrust means, but... Okay, well, the end of this game is going to be typing. We have 2 typers. It's true. Shambler was losing every fight. I think the Mind Tyrants would have been good if he had ended up using them to catch the enemy. But, anyway, I think we'll... Oh, well, hey, the Uptectons are here. We'll get to see some of those in action. Those really frustrate clerics as well. I was going to say we'll just speed through the game, but... Their anti-air attack is slowly trying to deal with the Wyverns. It's not exactly working, but... Uptectons would be okay. I think Architects are probably a good shout as well, mostly just because there's so many Goliaths here after a certain point. But you can see the Uptectons kiting backwards. It's really hard for the Goliaths to kill them, which is kind of funny to me. So, you know, getting some more feeling for... At this point, Hupsaiya is mostly just, like, looking at how the unit performs, right? He's not necessarily... He doesn't think he still has a chance to win the game, obviously. So I feel like some people might be like, why is he still in the game? He's learning. He's learning the interactions of the units. And Clerics do struggle versus things like Uptectons. Anything with Splash. So we'll go ahead and fast forward here until the end of the match. But yeah, that is going to be the conclusion of the match. Hupsaiya at the end saying you didn't have a natural faster than me at all. That's definitely not the case. Hupsaiya did lag behind in the economic department quite a bit at the early stages of the game. But I don't know that that was super consequential to the end of the fight. I think their economy had normalized by then. Anyway, the Shambler will post a match on the board, but there's many more matches to come, so stay tuned next time when we do another match in this set. There you go. All right, tomorrow.